Welcome to the inaugural Black Corner Let's Talk. Black Corner, for those who don't know, is a members platform and business directory for Black owner businesses. BC, as we call it, provides a place or a corner to highlight Black owner businesses by providing necessary brand awareness through marketing, amplification of Black business voice, business elevation, as well as harnessing a supportive community network. In short, BC supports, empowers, and elevates Black business. By increasing our equity, we can determine our own path. This month, we draw inspiration from International Women's Day, which is all about challenging inequality to affect change. Our take is challenging ourselves as Black women to champion our own crown. And so, on the note of crowns, I'd like to welcome June Forbes of J Forbes Hair to talk about her journey and owning her own crown. June Forbes is a freelance hairdresser, educator, image industry consultant with over 3 decades of experience working with international clientele. June has worked for Soft Sheen USA, delivers workshops internationally, and is previous owner of award-winning salon, Burnett Forbes, and continues to work with clients privately. June has extensive experience of all hair types, specializing in African, Caribbean, and curly hair. June is a part-time lecturer, delivers talks and workshops, and has contributed to Black Hair and Beauty magazine and the Hairdresser's Journal and Creative Head magazine, to name a few. She's recently written on diversity and inclusivity in Black hairdressing and British hairdressing and the effect of COVID-19 on the salon experience. She has provided teaching resources for educational publications, worked with Sandra Gittins, including co-authoring Hairdressing for African and Curly Hair Types from a cross-cultural perspective. More recently, June worked alongside Sandra Gittins to deliver workshops on working for African, Caribbean and curly hair at the National Theatre London. June has written and presented industry seminars as part of the Origins of African Comb exhibition, curated by Sally Ann Ashton at the Fitzwilliam. June volunteers her time delivering workshops to trainee makeup artists and hairdressers working in film and TV for the IBY Youth Program. Basically, she's an incredibly accomplished, busy lady. Really excited to have such an accomplished woman with us today. Welcome, June.
Hi.
Hi
nice
there.
To be here. Thank you.
To set the scene, I'm going to basically say that we at Black Corner see owning your own crown as being your true self. So understanding your worth, empowerment, and appreciating the power of your voice, particularly as a collective one, being comfortable in your own skin. So as we know, Black women have been conditioned to pare themselves down, be a version of themselves, downplaying our natural image, our hair, accents, culture, even changing names to sound more Western, or pronouncing it differently in order to feel that we need to, stay comfortable or belong. This, of course, feeds into the topic or debate of inequality and discrimination, not feeling like we belong or are othered, which is all too familiar. So talking about, owning our own crown and talking about that inequality, June, the first question I'd like to sort of ask really is, we have International Women's Day that's talking about challenging ourselves or challenging others for gender equality to affect change. Would you say that there is gender equality in hairdressing?
I'd say it's changing. One of the things I used to always find interesting in hairdressing was the majority of service users in hairdressing, not to mention barbering, but in hairdressing in particular, were women. The majority of service providers were women, but for a long time, the majority of award winners and names, and this goes across all sectors, not just Black hairdressers and white, it includes white. It was the men who would be the names, your Vidal Sassoons, your Trevor Sorbys, your John Faridas. Very rarely did you hear a female name mentioned. But I have to say that the Black hairdressing industry is probably ahead of the game in changing that. Because if you look around you today, there's people like Errol Douglas and there's Desmond Murray and the like. But in the Hall of Fame, you've got Charlotte Menster, you've got Michelle Thompson. You are actually seeing showcasing of a lot of Black female work. So I think that we're actually a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to equality. It's been, it's been a struggle, but I think, yes, our industry has been better at recognizing the talents of hairdressers across board. And I saw the shift there before I saw it in the mainstream.
Mm. Well, that's superb. It almost reminds you of chefs, where you kind of know more chefs who are men than chefs who are women, unless I guess you're Nigel or Lawson's same
Yeah.
sort of a flip, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And when you think about who the mainstream in the home, who the main providers of meals are, it's a similar kind of situation. But yeah, I'm seeing that. I'm definitely seeing that in our side of the industry, that shift.
Well, that's great.
And it's
I mean,
good to see.
yeah. That's exactly right. It is great to see, because there are incredibly talented hairdressers. So here's a question then, really. What does own your own crown mean to you?
To me, I mean, it means a lot of things, actually. It depends on what aspect you're looking at it from. First of all, you've got being strong in yourself. As you say, the sort of ethos of Black Corner, it's walking your own walk, having the confidence to be yourself. We've always, as Black people, I think, straddled, in the UK anyway, straddled two ponds. We have ourselves with our friends and our community and our families, and then we present a different face in the workplace. But I think now it's very much, there's a shift in that. But the thing that I find interesting as a hairdresser and working with women across board, I'm finding it that it's women of 40 plus are maybe struggling with that a little bit more, because I guess we're more mentally conditioned to be a certain way. Especially in certain professions, there's what does groomed look like? When do you speak out? And it's funny because it does actually, I realized recently, because of all the dialogue that's going on, the impact that it's had on our people, not just the women and the men, but in terms of the raised blood pressure, the diabetes, the obesity, to me, those are symptoms of the oppression, the pressure to just fit in. You mask it in other ways, and it's coming across in other ways. Again, I'll see clients who, there's the natural hair movement, and I think it's fine for the likes of you and I who work in creative industries, and you have the license to be who you want to be. But I think if you're in a professional environment, I definitely see there's still a pressure. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with this. And sometimes it's not even just about the employer. It's about you and how you feel you present. And am I going to be that militant woman if I turn up to work like this? So the whole owning your own crown is being able to step into that with a degree of comfort and assurance. But I still think, for all the dialogue, I still think we have a way to go. I still think, I almost feel like the younger generation are adapting to it, and they have their own sort of different issues. But I think for the 35, 40 plus aged women, it's a different journey for them. Like, I always have to remind myself that I am lucky to be in the position I'm in, working with women of my own community. And it jars me when they come in, when clients come in and they'll tell me of an experience, and I kind of have to think, gosh, is that still going on out there? But to them, it's normal. They deal with it every day at work, and it does erode at who you are and what your normal becomes. Your normal is to expect to be overlooked. Your normal is to expect to let a situation slide and not say anything because you don't want to be perceived as the aggressor or the angry person or the person that's always complaining or the person that's always making it about race. Sometimes it's not even about race, but you just don't want to be that person that's perceived as aggressive.
Yeah, and that challenge is, I guess, across a lot of sectors, really, that feeling of being perceived a particular way, particularly, as you say, the over 40s and being conditioned that way. And sadly, I guess, those who are sort of older tend to, I guess, be more of a position to be able to affect and influence, but if they're conditioned a certain way, then you've got that, I guess, that battle versus the younger woman who's not, who's on their way up and able to challenge more. So I guess maybe going on that then, the challenge really is that inequality still, and finding that voice and looking at, challenging oneself, and how we, I guess, stripping back decades of conditioning, and also
it's baggage. It's
yeah,
lots
exactly.
of baggage.
Yeah, and your identity, but also then challenging those, who I guess have treated you or view you a certain way. So we at Black Corner sort of talk about equity a lot, and the need to elevate ourselves. You look at allies, but we need to kind of do it for ourselves as well. And if you have like that voice, then perhaps there'll be more strength in there. But it's easier said than done, of course. So what would you say about, I suppose, coming together as a community and that collaboration?
When people say or hear the word collaboration, they tend to think, I find that gets two reactions. The obvious word is you're working with somebody, but sometimes people think, oh, that means I've got to do something for free, or I've got to do something that I'm not getting paid for. Collaboration means a lot of things. I mean, just you and I having this conversation is a way of collaborating. And sometimes it can be just, in your work, in something you're doing, mentioning another business. If you know somebody who is providing another service, it's being aware of what's available in your community, what's available amongst us as people, to be able to put, when something's recommended, you can say, oh, I know somebody who does that, and know that you can put that person forward. I think that we need to get away from the mindset of collaboration means free or cheap. I mean, obviously, we also need to recognize that if someone is good at something, or someone has a job or a profession, it's not a hobby or a part-time that you're trying to make a living. So you need to recognize people's value and be prepared to pay them their value. But I think it's also recognizing that collaboration or collaborative platforms are beneficial all round. And I think obviously, now that we have the internet, it provides that form of communication, that ease of communication that maybe wasn't there before. So I see, when you look on the internet, especially right now with COVID and everyone's glued to the screen, you see lots of things springing up, all these little separate platforms like Clubhouse and things like that, all these things that are really gathering pace. So yeah, collaboration for me means being aware as much as joining in with something. It means being aware of what people are doing, being able to reach out, if you like, and be open to people reaching out to you as well and discussing with you.
I'm going to switch it up a bit, because I know we've been talking heavily, but very importantly, and I'm going to call this Hairdresser's Dear Diary, because my goodness me, you hear all sorts from us who just witter on while you're just nodding along, and to all the stories that people are telling you, certainly over the years. Would you say that there's a shift, I guess, in Black women's perception and acceptance of themselves, sort of like more of a, I guess, a collective coming together, more so because of events that have, I don't know, I guess, highlighted, that need to do so, and more importantly, anything that's kind of come out of it action-wise?
One of the big shifts I've noticed over the years, and this is not just through hairdressing, just in general, there is definitely, when I was young, I think there was a differentiation between, say, African communities, Caribbean communities, and so on. There was definitely, as you would know yourself, not that they didn't mix, but there were obvious differences. And I don't think young people now care one way or another, really. They all are happy to just come under one umbrella and move together as one body to push towards what it is they want. That's probably one of the biggest changes I've seen. And I also see, I don't know if it's because of having grown up and been educated here completely, that there is a definite there's a leveling up of confidence in young people. I think, again, we were more inclined to toe the line and diminish ourselves. Young people, young Black women, I see, are a lot more vocal and a lot more confident in going after what it is they want, and also a lot better at the whole side hustle thing. So having, you know, maybe having your job, but having something else going on, that is the thing that you want to promote for yourself, that is more geared towards your community or a sideline business. Or so yeah, that's a shift that I've seen, you know, in terms of just confidence. There is definitely a growing level of confidence that I didn't necessarily recognize or see before. Find the route that you can use to affect change, that is open to you. It doesn't have to always be the loudest voice or the most obvious voice. There are smaller ways, and find the way for you and the person you can speak to bring about, even if it's the smallest change, but don't remain silent. And sometimes you have to feel uncomfortable before you can reach a position to feel comfortable. Yeah. So don't be afraid of that discomfort.
I've got to talk to you in relation to you being obviously a very successful entrepreneur, female entrepreneur. Obviously you've evolved and diversified over the years through sort of obviously hairdressing, but education, photography, and as an image industry consultant. So successful. As you mentioned before about COVID, you know, it's put pressure on all of us. How have you handled the changes, and how have you managed to adapt?
So COVID really, as you know, sort of slammed the hair and beauty industry against the wall, and all of us are wondering how we're going to survive post-COVID. I'm lucky enough not to have a premises currently. But one of the things during first lockdown, one of the immediate go-tos for me was there was a lot of online education going on. So I got a chance to go on, look at various videos, talks, seminars. So trying out new skills, new ideas. It also gave me the chance to go out, set some time aside to do some collaborate with a photographer. She was wanting to get certain side of photography, some images for her collection. It allowed me to do something different with hair, something I hadn't really done before. And the thing is, there's a lot of online hairdressing education going on at the moment. There's a bit of controversy around it between the sort of professional hairdressers, because it's how much do you give away online? Because obviously when you're online, you've got, the reach is endless, but it's what standard are you delivering, and what are you giving away? And are you actually in the long term diminishing the value of your skills? If you're giving away, well, not just giving away, because people are charging for them, but if you're doing all these workshops and they're going out there, are you diminishing the value of what you actually do? So I've held back from that for the time being. I do specific things with my clients where I will hold talks and we may address a certain thing, or if a client wants a one-to-one, you know, on a how-to, or if they're having a problem, I'll do those things. And I generally don't charge, because that is me just supporting my clients through this time.
I mean, you talked about sort of getting more involved in the imagery side of things. But what would you say that, you know, the whole sort of thing about cultural appropriation and sort of hairstyles?
You can't have equity and separatism. You need to be able to not so much embrace, but you need to accept and understand when people do actually appreciate. And if something's slightly amiss, yes, I know we all get tired of it, tired of having to educate and so on. But I think when it comes to your friends and the people you know, you have a general sense of where they're coming from. You know, it's hard to judge on a complete stranger. But I do think, yes, there are things that clearly have come from our culture and have been taken away, or like I said, repackaged, remarketed without even a nod to where they came from. And that's a different thing. And I feel very strongly about that. Hence, I think it's important, things like Black Corner and other again, collaborations that you come together to strengthen your community, to document your histories, to tell your stories, because then they can't be rewritten. That we tend to now have this thing about we're a society of oral histories. And I've always questioned that, because I know that there are writers, I know that there are historians, but I think if you follow that tradition, then you leave it open for somebody else to tell your story. So I think now more than ever, especially now that we are building a history in this country, that we do document, that you record, there's record of, as opposed to someone else telling your story for you, because I think that's where you're more open to misappropriation.
Talking about community, because again, community is a big thing for Black Corner. We looked, and we mentioned it before, look to pay it forward, support Black-owned businesses within the community and encourage that. You're giving back very much so, to the community through your volunteering, the advice, etc. that you do. Would you say that the Black community needs to do more, as a community, to give back to the community and support?
I think, yes, there's always more that can be done, but I think we're getting better at it.
Yeah.
I definitely see, again, even within my own local community, lots of things springing up where people are helping. We have a Saturday school locally that's been run for over 20 years, but I see them getting a lot more support from the local community. We have an old people's home, daycare centre that caters specifically towards Caribbean people. And again, I see a lot more activity online. I don't know if it's because I'm looking, but I think it's something we have gotten a lot better at. But there is always, there's always more to be done. And it's really, like I said, being open to reaching out and being open to people reaching out to you as well. Not to be dismissive before you've heard what someone has to say, because there may be just something that really isn't, is hardly any skin off your nose to just help, just a word of encouragement, or just put someone in touch with somebody else.
I can't believe how quickly the time has gone.
I know.
Yeah, I've got a closing sort of question, really, and that's more like a takeaway, really, because we like to, Black Corner like to sort of give, the community back, so give something back, talking obviously about paying back, something to take away. So here's a question to you. What would you advise your younger self, at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey? I know it's a loaded question.
I think in talking to you before, I was saying that's a big topic on itself. But I think if I were to look at something in particular, is do reach out, know your network, know your friends, know the value of your friends and the people you know, and don't be afraid of reaching out, even if it's not necessarily to get something, but to discuss an idea, run an idea by them, get as much feedback as you can before you venture on something, and take advantage of the knowledge that's around you before you look outside, because there can be things that could be made so much easier had you only known, and it could be a small thing. But yeah, if it was anything, is know the people around you, and don't be afraid to look silly in asking a basic question. Just, if you're not sure, ask. And that's probably one of the most simplest pieces of information that you would give even to the youngest child. But it's funny how, as adults, we are even more wary of asking than small children, because you feel as an adult you ought to know, but you don't always know. And there's a lot to be gained from just asking the questions.
Very wise. June, it's been absolutely fascinating and an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
It's been fun. Yeah,
thank you for coming to BC Let's Talk. Hopefully we have inspired more to take up the challenge and own their own crown. So thanks for your time. And thanks to the team who have helped and all who have tuned in. We appreciate you. So do stay tuned for our next BC Let's Talk in April. See blackcorner.co.uk for all information